Hi everyone! So I wanted to talk about eating disorders. I wanted to give my thoughts and opinions on it because, especially on a raw foods diet, because there are a lot of people who don't understand eating fully raw or a raw foods diet way of eating, or even vegan or even plant-based. They automatically pinpoint it as an eating disorder. When all you raw foodies out there, all you health people who have gone plant-based, vegan, and even raw vegan, fruitarian, or whatever, you understand that it's not an eating disorder. It is far from an eating disorder. It's not even on the radar for being an eating disorder, okay? The problem is that we have been brainwashed for so many years to eat a certain way that we don't understand our true natural ways. And what sets a raw foods diet, a low-fat raw vegan diet, apart from all the other fad diets out there, number one, a raw vegan diet is not a fad diet. It is just a term that most people use to help define the lifestyle of eating, the type of food that one particularly eats, you know. And that is one thing a lot of raw foodies talk about, is they don't like labels. I am not someone also who does not like labels either, but labels are good to use when it comes to diets, because it helps us understand what a person actually eats, you know. So this is one thing I think that's part of the healing process when you go fully raw or really start to eat much more healthier, is that you start understanding what your body is truly meant to eat, what it's truly designed to eat, and that is without a doubt raw fruits and vegetables and leafy greens, tender leafy greens, and nuts and seeds. I know that for sure. I have felt it personally myself, and I love it so much. And I know without a doubt that it is the human being, it's our natural way of eating. And that's one thing, is when you come to that realization and you understand what true food is for our body, you understand that all the other diets out there are fad diets. Those things are killing you. Those things are killers out there, you know. A raw foods diet is not a fad diet, and it's not an eating disorder. In a sense, you can actually say all those fad diets out there are eating disorders, not a raw foods diet, because not a fully raw vegan diet, because eating fully raw, low-fat raw vegan, fully raw, is the natural way for our body to eat. So how in the world can it be an eating disorder? How in the world can it be a fad diet? And again, it comes into that arena, is that our society has gotten so far off track from our natural ways, the way it's supposed to be, the way God intended it to be, that we actually are at that point where we can't even fathom of eating a diet of only raw plant foods. And that is so sad. That's sad, but it's wonderful on the other side of the coin that we are at a point where there are lots of people who vouch for a raw vegan way of eating, plant-based way of eating, but specifically going fully raw, that there's a big enough community that keeps growing too, that it'll eventually help other people in the world, and to help better their health, their body, and their quality of life too. So I looked up what an eating disorder is, what it's defined as, and so I just Googled it. I Googled eating disorders, and Google said that eating disorders are any of a range of psychological disorders characterized by abnormal or disturbed eating habits, such as anorexia nervosa. So a lot of people, when they hear the word eating disorder, they automatically think of someone who's starving themselves. They automatically see somebody who looks extremely stick thin, and they automatically peg an eating disorder as someone who just doesn't eat very much. And there's another side of the coin. An eating disorder is also someone who overeats, who eats too much, who is overweight, who is obese, you know, who has so many diseases in the body because of overeating and because of eating the poor foods. That's an eating disorder also. And I think also eating disorders are going on these fad diets, kind of like what I mentioned before. Going on a fad diet for a certain amount of time, that I believe is an eating disorder, because that is a psychological thing. It's creating abnormal and it's creating disturbed eating habits. You're disturbing your natural everyday eating flow, you know. And that's one thing. When you're on a raw foods diet, when you're eating fully raw, you're eating the way you naturally eat, the way you were intended to eat. There's no restriction, there's no moderation. You eat until your body says it's good and it's enough. And then you're done. You're satisfying all your sugar needs. You're satisfying all of your nutritional needs. You're satisfying everything the body wants, because raw foods create an alkaline state in the body. And that, from what I've learned, that's what you want. Of course, our bodies are alkaline bodies, and they're water-rich bodies, and that we get all of that from plant foods, and specifically raw plant foods too. And so I think when you talk about eating disorders, look at the other side of the coin too. I mean, our bodies, I think our bodies are meant to be thin, not to be super stick thin, because you could be eating a raw foods, raw vegan diet and you can still be unhealthy just because you're not eating enough. You're not eating enough for your body. And so you can kind of result in deficiencies and problems kind of long term when you don't eat enough. That's the only reason where a raw foods diet actually becomes unhealthy, is when you simply don't eat enough, and when you simply deliberately don't eat enough. See, that's part of an eating disorder. When you're on a raw foods diet and it becomes an eating disorder, that's when you intentionally and deliberately do not give yourself food, when you know you need to be eating a lot more food and giving yourself nutrition, and you deliberately say no, and you deliberately go for the extremely low calorie plant foods, then that's when that becomes an eating disorder, because that's a psychological thing. That's a psychological thing. That creates abnormal eating habits, you know? So eating disorders are not just anorexia or bulimia. Eating disorders is also on the other side of the coin. Like I said before, when you're eating too much, or when you're eating a SAD diet, standard American diet, that's an eating disorder, because you're denying your body the nutrition it needs. And of course there is a point where when you don't realize it or you don't understand it, then it's not your fault, because you just don't know. You didn't know. That's the way you were taught. That was the way you were brought up. You didn't know anything else. So it's really not your fault. But it becomes your fault when you become aware and you become knowledgeable. Then you start understanding that a raw diet, a different way of eating, is the way you need to be eating. And if you deliberately and intentionally choose to stay on a SAD diet, or stay on a cooked foods diet, or the poor way, not just denying your body the right food it's supposed to have and what it needs every day, you know, then that's when it becomes your fault. That's when if you run into health problems, you cannot complain. You have no right to complain or say anything about what you're going through because you intentionally and knew in the past that you knew what the right way was, but you chose to keep going your old ways. You chose to keep going down that same path you've always gone by. You've chosen to make poor choices with your foods, and so you're reaping what you sowed. Just like what the Bible says. I know the Bible talks about you reap what you sow. You need to sow good seeds in your life. You need to sow good seeds. I mean, it applies not only to life, but it applies to your health. I mean, part of life is health, and one of the major things in life is your health. And I mean, you want to sow a good seed in your health, and so every day and each meal that you eat, that is a seed you're sowing, and it's one bite at a time. And the more good bites, wise bites that you have, the better off you're going to be later in your future, short term and long term. But all the poor choices that you choose with each bite, it just results in poor quality of life, and eventually leads to a crash, and eventually leads to just really bad situations in your future that are going to cost you tons of money. That's going to cause you a lot of pain and heartache, and that's just going to really destroy you. Eating a raw vegan diet, fully raw, is extremely sustainable. It is sustainable. And again, the problem a lot of people have is most everybody has come from a standard American diet, has come from cooked foods. So of course you're going to find that it's going to be hard for a while to sustain yourself on raw foods, because you've been brought up and your body's been forced, and just been adapted to, not really adapted, but it's just been fed the wrong food for so long that it takes time to adjust to get back to its natural roots. It doesn't happen overnight. It does take time. You most certainly can go raw vegan overnight, but most definitely it does take time for the body to adjust properly, so you can make sure you get enough in and start getting back to your natural roots and letting the body heal and regenerate and everything. Yeah, so an eating disorder is not eating raw vegan is not an eating disorder at all. It's not even on the radar, because again, when you're eating fully raw, you're eating raw fruits and vegetables, you're eating the best way possible for your body. Once you've understood that, and you know that, and you realize that, then you know that there's no chance you have an eating disorder, really. And you're constantly working towards better health every day and a better quality of life every day, and maintaining that every day too. Okay, you guys, so that's kind of all I had to say about that. That's all I have to say about that. But I just really wanted to say that because I've been wanting to put it in a video for a long time, because a lot of people peg a raw foods diet as an eating disorder, and it is not. It is not even on the radar for an eating disorder. Okay, guys, so I will stop babbling here, guys. Remember to love being raw. Put a big old smile on your face today. I hope I did that for you, and I'll see you guys next video, okay? Bye, guys.